I think we can begin. So, karibuni sana, future leaders, to this fourth session of mentorship. I am Alora Kenneth, the mentorship coordinator, and today we have a very interesting session. For those people who've been asking how to apply for scholarships or applying halfway and not knowing what to do, or just trying to figure out how you can further your studies, but finances are a hindrance, we have two very special, very dedicated people who've gone through this, and they're here to tell us their experiences, very diverse experiences. One of them is currently in Japan, so even her timeline is a bit off. First thing in the afternoon, she's about to sleep. And one of them has just completed a Chevening scholarship, which is a very good one. Actually, it pays for almost everything. And I saw it fit to bring this to tell us the journey, to tell us what we need to do, the nitty-gritties, that extra factor that will take you to achieving this scholarship. Yeah. So without further ado, let me just introduce them, and then I think I'll tell you guys who is to go first. Sorry, I'm still admitting people. Now, from Japan, doing her PhD is Catherine Karaoke. She's a geotechnical engineer from Railway Technology Division. The other word I cannot pronounce, you will pronounce for us. And her scholarship is from the Ministry of Education, Culture, Sports, Science and Technology. She's doing her PhD. She's here. She'll tell us more about it when I give her the go ahead. Karibu sana, Catherine. Then we have a personal friend of mine, Mr. Philip Chele. Philip Chele did his master's in transportation and urban planning in Newcastle through the Chevening scholarship. And I remember we had been trying to apply at the same time. It's just that I dropped off somewhere and he made it, and now he's here to tell me again what to do to get to that level. So without further ado, Catherine Karaoke, I think we shall start with you. Tell us what you're doing with the Japanese. Thank you.
So thank you very much for having me here, and I do hope that I have some words that I can share with you that would be of help or would inspire you to, get that scholarship, if that is like the line that you want to go to. I will share my screen. Share. So, actually, you kind of misintroduced me for a minute there. So I have actually been in Japan for the last 7 years, and 5 years I was a postgraduate student. So I came here, did my master's and my PhD, but now I am working as a civil engineer in a Japanese consultancy firm for the last 2 years. Then I came to Japan by being awarded the Japanese government scholarship. The loose name is called MEXT. For my master's studies, and on completion, my scholarship got extended to cover my PhD studies. So in total, 5 years. What I do professionally, I'm a civil engineer at Nippon Koe here in Japan in their railway division. I'm sure probably some of you know of Nippon Koe Africa in Nairobi. Then in my spare time, I enjoy hiking the Japanese Alps in summer and spring. And also I love cities, and I really enjoy exploring Tokyo and other big cities in Japan. So I attended the University of Tokyo, where I did my master's, as mentioned, and majored in geotechnical engineering, and proceeded to do my PhD under the same major. For my professional interest, I am working towards developing my expertise in underground construction, but I'm very interested in project information management. I think The future is in information and technology. So ideas of how to enhance the efficiency in our industry with the advancement in technology is something that I spend a bit of my time on. And then I am passionate about all things on rails, the trains, the railway systems. So yeah, sometimes I am usually hunting for new interesting stations here and there. Yeah, so this is a picture of the University of Tokyo, like the most symbolic building. And this is an old station, underground station that was rebuilt in Tokyo because of the missed 2020 Olympics, yeah? And so when I told Alwara that I'm gonna, well, I would like to make a talk about scholarships and everything, I actually did a bit of overthinking, yeah? So I tried to ask myself, in essence, what can I say that will add value? And you know what I was thinking, it's 2020, you know, the internet is full of information. Do I have anything novel that you cannot get from the internet? Or, you know, will I be wasting 30 minutes of your time? Then we are living in the VUCA period, yeah? And my experiences back 7 years ago still relevant to what you have to undergo when applying for that scholarship. So for the 30, 20 minutes that I'm gonna make this presentation or talk, on the minimum, I would really want to inspire some engineers to explore the East, the Far East, as we call it here, for scholarship opportunities, and probably offer you some valuable insider tips, which can help you to you know, prepare some successful applications. So to do that, I really have 3 key subtopics, or 3 key items that I would really want to talk about, like give you just a simple overview of what Japanese scholarships are available, and a little bit of tips on the application, and maybe touch a bit about the life in Japan as a graduate student. And if from my presentation any questions do come out, even those that will not be in the presentation, I'll be very happy to answer them. So actually in Japan, you have really a wide range of scholarships, and they are both public, government funded, and private. But the most popular ones, and I would say with quotes, not to be misunderstood, that are African friendly will be the ones that I've listed here. And information about them can really be easily obtained by checking the Japanese website. So the MEXT scholarship, MEXT stands for Ministry of Education, Culture, Sports, Science, and Technology. It's a very long word, but yeah, shortened to MEXT. And it's offered by the government of Japan. And it's been there for so many years, probably 30, 40 years. And it's offered to all countries all over the world. Now, unfortunately for us in Africa, each country gets a very limited number. Like, you know, when I was applying for the scholarship for graduate school, they only offered it to like 4 people. And I think they skip every other year. But then if you compare with a country like India, you have like every year they're giving to about, you know, 50 to 60 students. If you look at Europe, similarly, they have like such numbers. So at the end of it all is all about the government's policy to the country or to the continent. But then the other new type of scholarship is the Abe Initiative, and this is purely targeted for Africa. And since its existence, actually, Kenya has been getting the highest number of students. So, and this scholarship is really targeted at people who have work experience. But unfortunately, it only covers master's level. It doesn't cover PhD. Then JICA will typically have some scholarships during certain times, but these are usually like organization dependent, basically maybe more focused on what the government is interested in. Like I know there was a time they were giving scholarships to people working for GDC or Kengen because the government of Japan was looking to invest in, you know, energy and stuff like that. Probably soon people in roads could be, you know, having some offers from JICA because I know there are upcoming investment in bridges in Mombasa area. So yeah, something to look at. Now, the detailed procedure of application for this scholarship is really almost the same. And the Japanese embassy plays a big role in in the application process, in supporting all that whole process. So I think this is information about exactly what happens you can find on the relevant website. Yeah, I will try not to drive in that. But I would like to mention something about the MEXT scholarship. So what is known out there, or what is available out there, is that the MEXT scholarship is only attainable by having the embassy of Japan in your country recommending you. But actually, there are certain major universities in Japan that are funded by the government to promote multicultural courses. And civil engineering is one of the fields that has departments where the universities are promoting multicultural. So what you have is you have a MEX scholarship that is usually university recommended. So back at my university, I was, quite interested to note that, people from Asian countries, quite a good number of them would come via the university recommended. So if you try to look at probably the top 10 universities in Japan, most will have a English program, engineering English programs, and these English programs, part of the financing will be university recommended MEXT scholarship. So you can apply directly to the university and then apply for the university to recommend you for MEXT. So another avenue to, improve your chances or options on the same. So now the application procedure is, standard. Prepare documents, a research proposal, personal statement, and, undertake a test and then an interview and all that. But then what will your standard Japanese university or scholarship body be looking for? I think after 7 years, I tried to summarize 6 key things that they will sit, and that's from like my job hunting experience, like interviews for a job back at the university, what they will be looking for. So when you're coming from Kenya, the one key thing they look at you when they're looking at your proposal, when they're looking at when they're interviewing you is, are you an adaptable person? Are you open to experiencing new cultures? Yeah, Japan is really the Far East. Like it's probably the third country with the earliest time zone, but also it's an island country. And the thing about island country is that you kind of end up developing your own way of living that is pretty very different from other countries. So the culture is exceedingly different, and the language is strange, and the writing of the language is equally strange. So in essence is, can you live, can you adapt quickly to exist in such a society? Is something that is important to demonstrate as you do your application. Then the other thing is that generally, Japan is a trust-based society. You know how in Kenya, we are all thinking about FIDIC and, construction supervision and with big books of contracts. Actually, FIDIC is not used in Japan. They have their own standard contracts, and these standard contracts will actually mainly operate on a trust-based point of view. The consultant just does like the basic design and conceptualization. And the detailed design is done by the contractor, including the actual construction. And the client supervises the contractor because they are sure that the contractor will, deliver. They're honest. They're gonna do what they say they would do. So an important part is, who is your recommender? What do they write? Is it someone, I don't know this person, but considering who they are, I think I can trust their word. So yeah, that is one key point that you should look into. Then the second thing is, you need to demonstrate your interest in the country, Japan. Do your research and find what they have to offer, like in terms of your research interest, in terms of your other like outside academic interest. Check what is there in Japan and really try to match it with your goals and interests. Kawaida, they will ask that question. I mean, why do you have to go to Japan to, do whatever you want to do? So in essence, being very specific and being able to, clearly explain that is a plus for them. Then the other question, is like they will be looking into is, what can you do for Japan? And I put that nothing unrealistic, because I mean, you can't tell them that we'll offer you a big contract to build some road or something like that. Is really show what you can bring for them in a subtle manner or something. Then also show an interest in their language and in their culture. I mean, everybody likes to be made to feel nice or good. Well, not everybody, but it's a thing that wins you a plus when you're discussing with like Japanese or maybe people from the Asian continent, yeah? Then the other point is that in Japanese graduate school, you do predominantly research. I think in the UK is really mainly classes, but in Japan you have 1 year of classes and 1 whole year of research for your master's. And PhD, of course, is full research. Unlike the US where you have to do teaching assistant, in Japan you don't do teaching. You can do teaching assistant if you have the right relationship with your professor, but it's not compulsory. So it's mainly research. So in addition, to picking your university, really look into your interest in what skills you want to learn, in what you'd like to investigate. Think a lot about your research interest. When you check the university, also check the laboratory, because what they have is a laboratory system. As a graduate student, you join a specific lab and it almost becomes like your home. So I think from my last 7 years, these are 6 points that when you're preparing that application, when you're preparing for that interview, that you should think about how to demonstrate them in your application. So let's say you get that scholarship, and then what's life like as a graduate student in Japan? So whatever type of Japanese scholarship that you get, typically they will cover your tuition fee, and then they'll give you a stipend of about 1,400 USD, which is about 150,000 yen. Now, your experiences living in Japan will really depend on your personal lifestyle and also maybe the location of your university where you shall be. I cannot mention on the lifestyle of an individual, but in terms of the location, there's rural Japan and there's like the big cities, Tokyo, Osaka, Kobe. And key difference is that rural Japan is really inexpensive. Housing is cheap, food is cheap. And the downside or maybe a plus side is that, the population of foreigners is quite small. Probably it will be only the foreigners in the university that will be in that area. So that means that, a very limited number of people who speak English. Maybe the plus side is that you can actually pick up the language quite quickly. If you live in a big city, well, things are expensive: housing, transport, food. And most cities are multicultural, very multicultural. So, and the Japanese people who live in those big cities, will typically speak English. So it's quite comfortable. Well, the downside is it's much harder for you to pick up the language. Now, despite these differences, in general, with this amount of money, you can easily cover all your expenses and maybe have a little bit more to go back home once every 6 months or once every year. But then this talk is to civil engineers. Why did I feel like making this talk? Is really maybe as a civil engineer, my experience studying taking my graduate studies in Japan. So the key thing, it's something that used to be said a lot in my department back in uni, is that actually Japan is like the world's natural laboratory for civil engineering. This country has faced all kinds of natural disasters. So they're constantly building, rebuilding, learning lessons, practical lessons, and some you learn in the laboratory and all. So there's a lot to learn. There's a lot to really even see. Yeah, number 2 is cliche, but yes, advanced technology and of course, great infrastructure. Because they are constantly building and rebuilding, maybe the kind of, new arising concerns that are occurring in the West about old infrastructure and all has not yet caught up in Japan, I would say that. And for them, because of the natural disasters, that maintenance and management of the infrastructure, bridges and whatever, is quite intense. So there are no like bridges collapsing at any one time or something like that. Then the number 3 is that it has a very strong research culture and research facilities. Throughout my master's and my PhD in my laboratory, you are assigned like an equipment. My laboratory was predominantly experimental-based research, so they have so many equipments. So I had 2 triaxial machines that were assigned to me. And when they are assigned to you, it means you like sort of own them. You have to figure out when they break down. Do you solve it yourself? Do you, call the vendor, organize for the repairs? So to me, that was a really good experience for me. Like by the time you're done using that machine, you look at your data and you can literally tell what's wrong because you have played with that equipment, used spanners, screwdrivers, and all things, sorted with so many issues. And yeah, it's, in my opinion, a very good environment to undertake your research. Then number 4 is that I really do feel that Japan is a resilient country. And as civil engineers, we should be, supporting our nations to be more resilient in terms of, building a proper social fabric and all. So it's something that you can really learn from just socializing with people and understanding its history, how everything is, how problems are solved here and all. And then number 5 is to really emphasize, like when you're thinking of studying abroad, and the first thing that happens to you when you get in a new country is like, you have all googly eyes, everything is so amazing, everything is so great. But the country has its own shortcomings, some of them that can, really be tough or difficult to deal with. But going back to point number 1, it's about you being adaptable. It's about you adapting to the conditions as they are. So thank you very much for listening to me. And I will borrow a saying from the Prime Minister of Malaysia, look east too. I mean, we are constantly looking at the West and all, but my experience in Japan is that, yeah, East probably would have more to offer. Thank you very much. Any questions are welcome.
Thank you very much. Okay, sorry, let me adjust my screen. Thank you very much for that very insightful presentation. I think for scholarships, yes, you're right. Traditionally, we've been looking at places that are predominantly English speaking, basically where we can adapt easily, but it's about challenging yourself and going somewhere where, you will actually mentally, grow. So, as you had mentioned, Kate, we're in a different time zone. It could be 10:30 to 11 right now. You should be resting. So, I think instead of waiting for your questions and answers at the end, if there's anyone who has questions or comments about the presentation that we've just had, kindly you can post them here. And I think even for the questions, we shall start with me. Yeah. So, Kate, I have a few questions I hope you can answer. So, in terms of language, is it a must that you learn the Japanese language before being indoctrinated into the school system? And
No.
number 2, it's not.
Okay, sorry, I will take a note. Okay.
Yeah, so let me go to number 2. Sorry, let me just admit one. So number 2, with all these, foreign countries, there's always the fear of discrimination. So I don't know what your experience was out there. You might perhaps tell us something small. 3, might you have a rough timeline of when these scholarships are usually?
Sorry, I think you froze. You froze for a minute there.
Oh, I paused for a minute. Sorry. Yes, I can see. Well, let me just check. Okay, am I okay now?
Yes.
Okay, so the third question was when these scholarships usually rolled out, because here we're heading towards the end of the year, and how does the Japanese academic calendar look like?
Okay, so 3 questions: language, discrimination, timeline of scholarships. Yeah. Did I miss any? And then on my chat, on the private chat, someone asked about affordability, and someone else asked about part-time jobs. Okay, so language. So most universities now have English programs for graduate school. At my university, actually, the whole of civil engineering department was in English, even for Japanese students. Because also now, like, they are also exporting so much of their technology. Having the right language skill is of importance to them. So in terms of language, to do your studies, you don't need to know Japanese, but to have a better quality of life, learn some Japanese. And most universities will offer, on the minimum, the basic language skills, like, you know, how to say hi, go to the shop, buy something. Yeah. On discrimination, yeah, unfortunately, you know, we are Africans, we are Black. There is discrimination, and you know, actually many students also struggle with this because you're very unexposed. If you find a very unexposed professor, you know, he might have some, you know, some doubts about you as an African student, and you might be expected to like prove yourself probably much harder than a Chinese student, or, you know, some other Asian student or European student. But in general, you won't have people spitting on you. You won't have people, you know, calling you monkey or something like that. Mostly Japanese are subtle in expressing themselves. So nothing crazy like we hear in the US or something like that. But yes, some discrimination is there. And then again, it has to do with your adaptability and maybe how you cope. Then on timeline of scholarships, I will apologize. My argument is look at the website. The one that I applied for, mixed scholarship, I think the call for applications is sometimes in March, and the whole process takes about a year. So you get to know whether you've qualified or not by October. Then the academic year is April to March. So if you get the scholarship in October, you can join in April. They have another second entrance in September. So yeah, but really it's information that you can find on the internet. I would also say that if it's something that you're truly interested in, the Japanese embassy really is constantly hosting lots of activities and events. Have a look at them. They even offer like Japanese language classes for free. So it's a place you can, you know, start building your rapport or something. I actually used to go there when I was a student in UON, because it was just like upper hill. You can walk up there. And yeah, it helps a lot to just be in the circles. Then on the, yeah, that's the timeline of scholarship. So in the chat, someone asked me about how affordable is relative. So what's the approximate cost of accommodation on food? I will answer that based on where I've lived. I've lived in Tokyo, and as I said, big cities are quite expensive. So in Tokyo, you make two decisions. You live far away from your university, you pay cheap rent, or you live close to the university and you pay expensive rent. But your transport and rent, that comes to about 70,000 yen, about $700 per month. So maybe about half of your scholarship you'll spend on your transport and housing. But if you stick to the university dormitory, you can bring that down to about 50,000 yen or something. Then food, actually we have Chinese shops where you can buy like cheap vegetables and meat, and Indian shops. I would say with a budget of about 40,000 yen, you are able to have decent meals, and lunch at the cafeteria is also quite affordable. So in essence, with your scholarship, about 100K of it is good enough to give you, you know, like take care of your expenses. Yeah, maybe more. It depends on your lifestyle. Then someone asked about a part-time job. So that is dependent on on your type of scholarships. Like JICA scholarships are very strict. No part-time job is allowed. But like the scholarship that I had, you can do part-time job. In fact, even the university will help you, will keep advertising for you, you know, some part-time jobs that are available. So that depends on your scholarship and your professor. Some professors are very strict about your lab attendance. They'll say like, I need to see you in the morning, from morning 9 to 5 p.m. Yeah. Then, and yeah, there are lots of all types of part-time jobs that are available. Then,
I think that's about it. You've covered the questions
one
that
last
are on
one.
the chat.
There's one, you're talking about looking east. Could you kindly highlight the culture, friendliness, and adaptability? Do you have work-study arrangements? So work-study arrangements is not compulsory. I mean, I'm imagining it's like teaching assistant. It's not compulsory. That depends on the relationship you have with your professor. So if you have a good relationship with your professor, he has a teaching assistant position, well, of course, he'll consider you. And about highlight the culture of friendliness and adaptability, I think, yeah, Japan, people are, you know, from the basic point of view, they are friendly. They will, you know, try to make you comfortable. Everyone is always trying to make it easier for the next person. So you clean after yourself, you know, you queue properly. Everyone is making an effort just to make it easier for the next person. So yeah, it's a pretty friendly culture. I think that maybe the biggest highlight of their culture is that it's a very agreeable culture. At any one discussion is people want to come to a consensus. Everyone is working towards getting to the consensus. So, you know, despite having strong opinions or whatever, everyone will present them in a way to try to just bring the group back into consensus. Maybe that's the unique cultural aspect about looking east that I think is important. So I think that's it for the questions. Sorry. Oh,
Okay, I was about to let you go, but there's an individual again who's asked a question. I don't know whether you can read
how do
it.
you manage family balance back home? So, well, my family back home is my mother and my sisters and children. So, I mean, not my children, my brothers and sisters and my mother. So, I guess it's the same. I worked in Mombasa after graduating from university. It just feels the same way because I would go home like once every 3 months or something like that. I think that depends on the individual. And I know that people who have families back at home, they do get an opportunity to come with their families for their studies. So yeah, if you have family, that's something you can consider. And as I said, with your scholarship stipend, depending on your lifestyle, you can plan to go home, to travel back home more frequently. Yeah.
Yes, I think you've covered everything, which is absolutely brilliant. And as per our timeline, the way you had requested to do the presentation first, I think you've covered pretty much everything, and we can let you go unless you want to still participate in this. It's up to you, but
Listen,
asante sana,
have my
asante
dinner.
sana. Huh?
Yeah. I will listen as I have my dinner, and thank you for having me. And I hope that I have inspired someone and that my tips can help someone to get that scholarship. Thank you. Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Kate. Dr. Kate, I am so sorry. You have traversed the
Please,
engineering field, traversed the engineering field further than so many of us. So we are blessed to have you here. And now we can move to the next. Now, Philip Chile, I'm seeing you're muted. If you could please unmute. Philip Chile will be our second presenter. He's from Newcastle. He just finished from Newcastle, a shaving scholar. And the reason actually I rushed to have this presentation is because applications is next week on the 3rd. I think it's on Tuesday. So even for people who not started, I mean, there's still time. Start now. I promise you, this thing is worth it. So let's hear from someone who's gone through that whole entire process, from the application, the learning, to the culture out there, and now he's back to tell us how everything goes. Philip, karibu man.
Thanks, Alwara. Can you hear me?
Mm.
Okay. So yeah, as you said, the application deadline is next week, Tuesday. But yeah, I mean, if you're really interested, you can always put something in good time. I've done it. But anyway, so mine is a bit less formal. I just have a one-page slide, which I'll touching on the areas I'll cover, if I can find it here. I cannot see the PowerPoint.
The option for sharing screen or what?
No, I mean, I can't see the window for the PowerPoint.
If you have the PDF, you can just slot it in.
All right. So, okay, while I do that, my name is Philip Chele. I have a background in civil engineering. I did my BSc in University of Nairobi in civil engineering. Then I did my master's in transport planning and engineering, not urban planning, at Newcastle University in the UK. This is north of England. In terms of personal interest, I would like to, in my lifetime, see integrated transport system in Kenya, integrated multimodal transport system in Kenya and in the region. So, hopefully that will come to pass. So, can you see my Chevening journey?
Yes, we can see Chevening journey. Thank you.
So, like Catherine said, I don't want to bore you with the standard admin information. You can get all of this on the website. But generally, the scholarship is fully funded from the UK government. By fully funded, this means they pay for everything from your flight to your accommodation to your stipend. So the only thing I remember paying for was an English exam, which is valid for 2 years and is mandatory, because I'm sure some of you will ask, and a TB certificate, of which they refund a portion. Then in terms of the focus area of the scholarship, in particular, they're looking for leadership ability, your networking ability, a justifiable university choice, and a clear career plan. I'll expand on this. They also want someone who is adaptable with an interest in learning about UK culture and heritage. And very important, because you actually sign a document to this effect, you need to show that you have a desire to come back to Kenya. So in terms of the application process, there are 4 essays titled as with these first 4 points of the focus areas. So there's leadership. In this area, you're showing any experience you have in any form of leadership. It doesn't have to be tied to your work. It could be outside work. It could be any mentorship you've done, like running a session like this, just like a Laura, or any leadership positions you held in the field or in the office. Even if you're leading one person, it's still leadership. And one of the key pointers in this area is as you do your essays, don't be modest. We have a tendency to dumb down, not to sound, to dumb things down. Don't be modest, but don't brag. So if you did something, say what you did, not about what your team did. It's I. when you're doing your essays, be very honest as well, and be to the point. Don't focus on big words. So, and this affects not just the leadership essay, but the other three as well. And generally, what I like to say is, you're selling yourself. Whenever you're writing any of the essays, you're selling yourself. So just imagine, read out that paragraph and ask yourself, if I was paying, would I invest in this person? Then the second essay focuses on networking ability, just like Dr. Kathleen's case. As she said, for Japan, they also want to see someone who, has the ability to network and market, say, Chevening or what the UK is doing in their home country. So it's looking for someone who can develop and cultivate a mutually beneficial relationship. With respect to university choice and career plan, I'll talk about these two together because they go hand in hand. The career plan is very important. So you need to have a clear idea of what you want to do in the short, medium, and long term. So the UK is not like Japan in that you don't need to have a research proposal, because it's very they have two types of degrees. There's the coursework, and there's coursework-based masters and a research-based masters. For Chevening, you're doing a coursework-based masters, so you do taught modules, and then you do a research module, which is the dissertation. So as you develop your career plan, it should match the university choices you've selected. And as you choose those universities, you have to look at the individual modules that they have and how relevant they are to your career plan. Because if there's a mismatch, then they'll say it's very easy to tell that you're not clear about what you want. And why this is important can be summed up in the figures. Essentially, these guys are looking to invest roughly £50,000 in you for the short term and possibly in the near future, looking to gain some return in some form or another. So they need to be convinced that you have a clear plan. It's not set in stone, they know that, but you must have a plan of what you will be doing, what you plan to do when you come back within the short term, which is usually 1 to 2 years, the medium term, which is 2 to 5 years, and the long term, which is 5 years plus. Then the other thing to do is you need to do a lot of research. Now, yes, you can. You can always reach out to a former scholar for guidance, but at the end of the day, you also have to show some initiative. Do your research on what the UK is doing in your country, relative to how does it relate to your career, and how you going to the UK to study subject X is beneficial to achieving that goal. So, for example, in my case, there was a program the DFID was running called Sustainable Urban Something Development. So you have to tie in your chosen course, which is transport planning, to urban development in the county, at the county level or whatsoever, and just show that you have a good grasp of what's going on in your industry, what is going on in the industry currently, and what is in the pipeline now or in the future, and generally just to show you have a good grasp of what's happening. Because again, like I said, you're selling yourself, so you need to be able to convince these guys that you're worth that investment. Then the other thing is, on top of what the research on what the UK is doing in your country, you also look at the relevance to national plans, because at the end of the day, the idea is to come back to build Kenya. So how relevant is your course to national plans, to UK priorities, to global priorities, and the like? So you just bring all this together into one coherent piece of writing that sells you and is convincing. Then the other thing is when you're giving your, like Dr. Catherine said, when you're giving your plan, you need to be ambitious, but also realistic. So fine, you say in the long term, you're going to come and, change the entire country's, construction setup in 2 years, which just sounds ridiculous because we know how slow moving government is. But you can say, I'll come in, I'll be Director General of NCA and set about doing this and this and this. This will solve this problem and so on. So I believe that covers the application process, the essays. Then once you submit the 4 essays, you go through. It's quite a long application timeline. So the first application period is from September to November. Then you are longlisted in January and shortlisted again sometime in Feb, March. At which point, assuming you've passed the long list and the short list, you'll be called for an interview. So at the interview stage, it's again, as much as you submitted the application, your life doesn't stop. So the interview stage is for you to build on what you've already written. You're not going to go and repeat what you wrote in your essays, you're going to expound further. So give examples of what you've done, possibly talk about things you've done since the application that are relevant to what you wrote, possibly any research or new findings or mentorships you did. For example, in my case, part of my preparation for an interview was interviewing leaders in the sector on, what's actually ailing the industry. And then you structure your questions in relation to what you wrote in your application so that you actually have something coherent and convincing to discuss in your interview. What else was there? Yeah, after the interviews, they're around from around March to May. You get feedback in June, at which point you're now signing all those documents, including the one about returning to Kenya, and then you eventually leave in September. In terms of this admin stuff like visa and whatnot, visa is paid for by Chevening. They also cover your NHS, which is the health insurance supplement. Like I mentioned earlier, the only thing you pay for is the TB certificate, which you will need for your visa application, and the English certificate, which by that point you should already have because it's a requirement for you to get the scholarship. But again, you can get all these requirements on the website. What else? So in terms of living in the UK, like I'd mentioned earlier, you need to be adaptable. It's cold. I will not lie, I will not sugarcoat it. It is very cold, as in you need to be ready for that. You need to be ready to not see the sun for a long time. Of course, it's also dependent on where you go. It rains a lot. In Newcastle, it doesn't rain as much as the rest of the UK, but it's the coldest city. It was the coldest city in England. So yeah, that was interesting. Food, again, I will not sugarcoat it. UK food is not the best. So of course, it's being a very diverse society. There are quite a number of multicultural restaurants available, and so you don't have to worry too much about that. But the UK is a bit expensive, so it's actually cheaper to cook. This is the same in terms of accommodation. University accommodation is also a lot more expensive than private accommodation, so that's something you need to consider. And just to put that in perspective, the Chevening stipend is about £1,100. I was staying at university accommodation, and that was about £765 per month for accommodation. But okay, although that was over nine months, over 12, it comes to about 500. So, and that's because Newcastle is one of the cheaper cities. So when you're in London, you're looking at, it's ridiculous. You literally need, I'd recommend you go for private. But again, by the time there are lots of people who can guide you on this when it comes to that point in time. So I wouldn't worry too much about that, but just keep it at the back of your mind. Then to anticipate some questions, discrimination, yeah, without, it's there. Personally, I didn't experience it, but mostly because, to put it in very frank terms, I can be a bit of a blockhead sometimes, so in that I could have been discriminated against and I don't know because I don't read hints, but anyway, that's their loss, I guess. It didn't bother me. But yeah, at the end of the day, what I'd always recommend is don't be confrontational. It's the channeling the insecurities, so I wouldn't let that stop. I wouldn't let that stop you from, or stop myself from, gaining something from this experience, because it's an experience. In terms of work, you have 20 hours maximum during school time. 20 hours, that's 4 hours a week. Or, okay, is it 4 hours a week? 4 hours a day for working days. I don't really know I guess there's some jobs that would work weekends, but again, it depends on your course. My course is very intense. We used to have classes from 9 to 5, and then I have coursework. And so personally, I wasn't too keen on spending my free time working in some Amazon factory or something, standing the whole night to come to class the next day. But again, that's personal choice. I know some people worked at the football stadium selling tickets over the weekend. That could also work. The beauty of the UK is that it's very easy to travel around. It's cheaper to go by bus, much, much cheaper. Train is very expensive. So it's not just the SGR that's expensive. Generally, rail is expensive across the world. But you can get a rail card which gives you 30% off on all your trips. It comes in handy sometimes when you live far away from, say, London, like I did, and you need to be there in a short time and you don't fancy a 11-hour bus ride. So, but in terms of travel, it's very, very easy to get around. If you're brave enough, you can, go with your license, hire a car, but you need to do a test there. Yeah. Then, oh yeah, and just to stress, the 20 hours a week is just during term time. Term time is when, for the semesters. Outside term time, of course, you don't quote me on this, but outside term time, you can work full time. But this is again dependent on what is shown on your visa at the time. And again, I stress it can be a very intense course because it's 1 year. It's actually essentially 9 months, because we finished teaching in March, and I submitted my dissertation in August. Then you have a 1 month holiday in between that. So it's quite intense. So just keep that in mind as well. Don't remember you also went there to study, but so you need to be careful with your work-life balance. And then, yeah, I believe I've covered. Yeah, anything else I can cover if there are questions. Yeah. Regarding chevening. So, question from Nancy regarding chevening. What are the prospects for financing for a second degree in the UK? Nancy, this is assuming you already have a master's, I believe. I'd say check the requirements. Just check the requirements. I don't remember that being an issue, but I know for some scholarships it is, but just check the chevening requirements. I don't want to, mention something I'm not sure about, because it can vary year on year. Yes.
If I can answer something,
Yeah.
Abira asked, what are the prospects of financing for a second degree in the UK? In the UK, is it in the UK chevening or in the UK another degree? Because for chevening can finance a second master's, but they cannot finance a PhD. Am I right, Jay?
Yes, chevening is a
Yeah,
master's
and then so
scholarship
it's
program.
just a master's, and what are the others? I think a fellowship or something, but it doesn't go past that. It doesn't get to PhD status. So Nancy, I don't know whether it's a second degree via chevening or a second degree in the UK. They check, then they're saying this guy is milking us dry. I don't know.
I
I
see.
think that's what I meant. Like if the first one was already in the UK, now the second one. I think that's what I mean, Shelley.
Okay, I get you. I get you. This is, I mean, in my year, we had someone who did have an undergrad in the UK and her master's there. She got a scholarship for the master's. But again, that was, I think, self-financed undergraduate degree. What chevening won't do is if you had, say, I think they can't give you two scholarships or two DFID scholarships, something along those lines.
Or
But yeah, if you've done
DFID, I get you.
Yeah, but if you've done your undergrad in the UK, there's no issue. There's someone who did it in my year. And then, actually, I think I skipped a question from Felix. What academic certificates is one required to have during application, apart from maybe degree certs? Again, this is dependent on the application, the year of application, because it changes occasionally. So at least I can only speak about my year. So you just needed my transcripts and my degree certificate. And if I'm not wrong, those were actually uploaded later. So you did you submitted the main application for example, in this case, it will be Monday next week. And then at a later time, they'll either give you a date, or they'll send you a message requesting you to submit your certificates. You don't need your high school certificates unless they specifically ask for it. But again, this condition, it's very clear on the website. It's very important that you learn to you do your research on the requirements, because again, some of the things I mentioned, for example, what DFID is doing in Kenya is not just there. It's not easily found. You have to be very deductive in what they've written. So I also don't want to spoon feed you and start set expectations where you will be expected to do your research in the process. So just check the website. Are there other scholarships other than chevening? Yes, there are. Unfortunately, I can only speak about chevening. To the UK, there's the Commonwealth Scholarship, which is like the smaller sister of chevening. The only difference is that you have to apply through the ministry or something along those lines.
Yeah.
Now, again, you need to check. You need to do your research, because this year they have combined the Foreign and Commonwealth Office and the Department for International Development. So I'm not sure if both scholarship schemes are still running. So just check Commonwealth scholarships and just check chevening scholarships. You'll be able to get more information. That's to Abdi. Are there scholarships to Canada? I would imagine so. I can't speak about them, but yeah, there are scholarships there are many places. I think even Russia you can get, and Hungary. So it just depends on what you're looking for and where you look. From Felix, how can one blend his demanding job with scholarship? Demanding job. Well, in my case, I took a sabbatical. It's a full-time. Chevening is they are funding you for a full-time course. So in my case, I took a sabbatical for 1 year, and then I came back. In some cases, if you can't take a sabbatical, people resign from work, and look for work when they're coming back. So it just depends on your current scenario. And then, but I would say, just apply. Don't. I spoke to one of someone who's applying in the current year. Don't worry so much about work. Work will always be there. I know it's easier said than done, but apply first. Don't start thinking about but I'm doing so well at work. Just apply first. Then next year, when you have the job in front of you and the everything offer in front of you, that is what I call a good problem. You can deal with it at that point in time. But ideally, work is always going to be there. This is an opportunity that doesn't come that easily. To put that in perspective, in the 2019-2020 year, there were 50,000 applications globally. Kenya alone had 15 to 1,700 applications, and they chose 33 in Kenya. Globally, they chose around 1,500. So that's, I think it was 3% or 2%, some crazy percentage, some crazy acceptance rate. So, you just, at the end of the day, this is going to open opportunities for you down the line. So I wouldn't worry too much about work at this point in time. Obviously, it's, again, easier said than done during COVID times. But yeah, I still stand by that. Is there another question regarding certificates? Do other documents merit aid your case? Documents of merit. If you think, what you can do is, I know for the application, they just ask for transcripts. But when you're called for the interview, you can actually carry documents of what you've done. Like I have a friend who does a magazine, Co-Engineers, and for her interview, she actually went with samples to, as you're talking about it, you can actually show her, this is what I've been doing, and so on. So if you think it adds value, yes, you can mention it in your essays, but I don't think there's a place you can submit it. But again, check the requirements on the website. Do your due diligence, because it will show if you do not. It's very important to do your due diligence.
I think that's that, but I want to highlight something. Probably Felix was asking how can one blend his so demanding job with a scholarship. I'm not sure, but I would like to think he's asking about working and studying there, if I'm not wrong. And I think to answer that, I don't believe Chevening allows anyone to work or earn past a certain, change out there. I don't know whether you can confirm that, actually.
Yeah. So like I said, they say it's dependent on your visa. So in my case, and I think most Kenyans, we had 20 hours a week. So yes, you can work, but within those 20 hours a week, and they're very strict on that. Something I forgot to mention is you also have a maximum number of days for which you can be outside the country. I think it's for the whole year, I think it's 30 days total. And if you're outside for a continuous period, I think of longer than 30 days, then they stop your stipend. But ideally, if it's intermittent, it's allowed within the 30 days. But it would depend on your visa. So just make sure you check that. So that's 20 hours a week. Then you said something about a limit on additional funding. Now, I know in our year they changed the policy. This is why I keep saying you have to do your due diligence for your year, because these things change, particularly this year because COVID has affected a lot of things. For example, in my case, we were learning online from March. We were just indoors from March until around August. So just the policies may vary year on year as they learn and develop. So you have to do your due diligence. I can't stress that enough. And again, your work, the ability to balance work will depend on the intensity of your course. My course was very intense. And I tend to give 100% in everything I do. So it's also difficult for me to start splitting daytime is work, school, and then Gioni is I'm going to do some part-time work. So I know in such cases you can work over the holidays because you have a 1 month holiday over Easter. And also you have some time in summer, well, that's 2 weeks, but you can also plan for an internship after, because some universities, for example, Newcastle in my case, have been they're running a new visa program where you get 6 months after your course, where you can actually do work. So my visa is actually still valid until March next year. But because of COVID, there was not much in terms of internships, and I was tired of the weather, of course. So I came back. Yeah. I hope that answers your question, Felix. Then,
okay, I would just like to.
Oh, hang on. There's another question from
Okay.
Nancy. How has the MSc enhanced your job prospects both in the country and beyond? What would you say the impacts have been? I came back in September, so it's a bit hard to say, seeing as I've not been back for long. I just resumed work the other day. But in terms of, it gives you visibility, because I'll give a couple of examples. Last year, I was approached by 2 recruiters, and in both cases, one was the World Bank, and I can't remember the other one. The area I was deficient in was an MSc. So it's, if you're looking to do to work in the international organizations, the UN, World Bank, and whatnot, you need a master's. That's without a doubt. Even for the entry-level positions, you need a master's. And then secondly, if you start looking at even the work that's being rolled out in Kenya, if you look at the RFPs and so on, you will start, I'm sure by now you've seen, in a lot of cases, they've started talking about masters, because at least in my opinion, where we're headed as a country, specialization is becoming more and more important as our problems become more and more complex. So, and so I'd say it's in the long run, the value is there. It also opens you up. It opens up your mind in terms of what maybe some practices you were doing before, and what's practice out there, global practice. Yeah, so I'd say it has definitely had a positive impact. But like I said, I've only been back for 1 month. Sorry, for 2 months. And it's difficult to give an objective statement, seeing as we're not in a normal time with COVID and whatnot. So economies all over the world are depressed. But yeah, in fact, usually guys approach you. I remember actually having an interview. Some company in the UK approached me a few days before coming back. But yeah, that didn't work out. Because again, the condition for coming back, but also do not quote me on this, but okay, in the old, a few years back, I don't know, some time ago, some chevening applicants were able to stay, but they're a bit more stringent now in terms of you coming back. So personally, I wanted to come back because, again, unlike Japan, the UK is, in terms of infrastructure, they've pretty much got it all. So a lot of it is mainly maintenance, and I'm more interested in what can be done in Africa, not just Kenya. So my focus is continental rather than Kenya. Probably Asia as well, South Asia. So because those are the more exciting projects, I'm not too keen on doing maintenance or and just a single interchange of bicycle parts and so on. So it really just depends on you. Yeah. There's a question from Felix. Are there practical classes for MSc in engineering? Could you expound on that, Felix, if you're online? Felix.
Well, maybe he meant, I don't know, Felix, unmute. You can unmute now.
Okay, I can just give an answer based on my assumption. Practical classes like labs and so on. Yeah, if you're doing things like geotechnical and so on, you have labs. In transport, you have, we have field trips, but like I said, that's in normal times. Because of COVID, we were supposed to have a field trip to Germany for a week, where you tour transport projects and facilities and companies in Stuttgart. But because of COVID, that was cancelled. So, but yeah, they're usually field trips for the courses. Again, when you're doing, if you're interested in that kind of thing, you include it in your research for university choice. And then would you share your previous application as a guidance on works?
I think you have to do this. This is a no-brainer. You have to do this because I remember one of the applications I actually got the essays of someone who actually made it and then they made it to the final. So, Chile, I don't think you have a choice. Just put it in a nice PDF.
What I can do is I can give you guidance because, again, like I said, a big part of the essays is being honest. Because when you're not speaking as yourself, it shows. And having applied 4 times, I know, so I'm speaking from a point of knowledge. So you need to own it. So yes, I can share on individual basis, but as long as you have, just for guidance, please do not copy paste. It's not good. Those things don't work there. And in this application process, like I said, 1,700 applications in Kenya alone, your essay needs to stand out. So if you copy paste, this guy is not going to read it. He has 1,699 hours to read. So again, it's purely for guidance. I'd prefer to deal with it on a case-by-case basis rather than doing a mass sharing. So yeah, just reach out. I can share some. You'd be surprised the kind of resources you can find online for chevening, for doing the essays and for interview preparation. So you can find quite a bit. I can also share the ones I have with me right now. I don't know if you can attach things on the chat, but
I think what you can do, okay, if you can attach them to the chat, that's good. But I wanted to package it such that everyone receiving everything, of course, except of your essays. But I wanted to package it such that everyone gets, the video, the link, to this recording, and But anyway, it's up to you.
I can send them to you, but it looks like you can attach the chat. But I can send them to you if it's easier.
Okay, no problem. Just send them so that I collate everything.
Yeah. So the main idea behind being hesitant on the sharing is because I made a couple of mistakes in my first 2 applications where you're blown away by someone else's application, and you start thinking along those lines to the point that it sort of loses identity in terms of who you are, and that shows during the interview stage. So I applied 4 times. So as you can tell, for this scholarship, resilience is very important. So Alora, you need to do it again. They actually like it when you're persistent. I actually remember being doing a video where they said I specifically have to mention that. But I applied 4 times. So, first time was an outright rejection. Okay, not as dramatic as it sounds, but the next 3, I was called for an interview on each occasion. So 2 interviews and then rejection, and then I finally got in the last interview, which was last year. Unexpectedly, because I was on the waiting list. So I had a very short turnaround time between getting my documents together and leaving. Roughly about a month. I got my visa the week before I traveled. It was a bit hectic. But yeah, so yeah, own your essays. You need to own them. You need to be honest. You need to be bold and channel your inner, confidence. Your inner, who is very confident. Trump is. I'm not to be political, but he's a very confident guy, despite his the way he does things. Channel your inner Trump, the sensible side. So, but this one I know is very important. Don't be intimidated. You'd be very surprised that you may not, because like in my case, I'm very self-critical. So it takes a lot to impress. It takes a lot to impress me, even for myself. But you find that sometimes it's you've passed your message. So don't be afraid. Start writing. Don't worry so much about work, or you're not ready, or just apply. Applying is free. And yeah, just start. We are to be philosophical. We are the next generation of engineers. We've complained a lot about the current crop, so let's do our part in making sure that the guys after us can actually say these guys actually did something. So apply. I think there were more questions that came in.
Where do you work now?
You should be the incoming AU High Representative for Infrastructure. Thank you, Felix.
Anyway, I think there's also one that I encountered, or rather that gave me some headache when I was doing my other application now.
Yep.
So I want to talk in terms of references or referees. They say
I forgot that. Yeah.
you need to have at least, is it one professional referee or one, and then one academic referee or something like that. Now, there's something I want to point out.
Yeah.
Chevening accepts people of all ages to apply as long as you've done 2 years experience, etc. But when, let's say you're applying 7, 8, 9 years past campus, and obviously one of the references is supposed to be, let's say, your professor who took you for whichever studies, who can write a very nice reference letter. Now, in the event whereby you didn't actually even form that bond, I hope you understand what I'm saying, such that even in 7 years they don't remember your name. Could you suggest any other, like, can I do a personal, like, can I go to the chief and tell the chief, please write for me this reference letter? And like, how should we tackle the reference problem?
Well, I wouldn't recommend the chief unless he can speak about your capacity. But I didn't have any academic reference. I mean, we have to be realistic. You've been out of school for how long?
Exactly.
3 years. This guy maybe doesn't remember you, but the guys at work can give you a better reference. I had 2 professional references. One from when I was on site, and one from, was it one of my current, one of the senior engineers at work. I work at GIB, by the way. There's a question. I was at GIB before, and I still work at GIB now. So I got my references were both from my time at GIB. So if you have someone who can speak about because the idea is to speak about your ability. How can this guy do a master's in the UK? Is he adaptable? Does he have the mental resilience or the initiative to be able to do that? You need someone who can speak about that. So ideally, if that person has worked with you, the better. Obviously, more recently, the better, because I remember approaching some of the union lecturers, and a guy tells you to draft it, and then I see. But in my opinion, it's not the same as when somebody else drafts it based on the relationship you've had. It just doesn't come across as impactful. But that's my opinion. Don't let that stop you. So you look for someone who can comment on your ability. If you go to those requirements, you'll see they say that in the references. This should be someone who's can comment about your ability to complete a master's and so on. So yeah, and something else I forgot to add. I know they say something about upper second for your undergrad. Don't worry. I got a lower second and I got the scholarship, so that should not stop you. As long as you can get into the university, even though the universities say that you need an upper second, if you have the experience and you can justify why you deserve to be in that course, they will accept you. What I would recommend is be strategic in your university choices. You can choose. Don't also feel the need to choose a lower ranked university because they're intimidating and so on. If you want the highest one, go for the highest one. But what you do is you can do a balance of maybe in the event that these ones only accept lower second, these ones accept upper second. You can, out of your three choices, maybe one of them can be a lower second just to cover yourself. But ideally, most Africans we do well for ourselves. If you're a good student here, or even an average student, you can get into a UK university. It's not as hard as it seems. So don't let that discourage you.
I think I also have something else to point out. Sorry, I may be hijacking your talk, but even me, I'm a relic in applying for scheduling. I like free things. So something you might have forgotten to point out is when you're applying for the scheduling, so the scheduling is the scholarship, but you still need to apply for the individual courses of the individual universities, Now, for the individual courses of specific universities, there's universities that actually ask for an application fee. So when you're doing for instance, I think Newcastle does that, right? There's a time I was applying for Newcastle for the ship, and then they asked for they changed. Yeah, so you need to be very careful.
I believe that is something. I believe that's something you could get waived when you tell them you're applying for sponsorship from Chevening Secretariat. I believe it can be waived. I remember some cases last year, so don't worry too much about that. But also don't overcommit because it's not a guarantee. So you have until July next year, I believe, to submit an unconditional offer. So if you have a conditional offer pending this, or during your application, just tell them you're applying for sponsorship. They can waive that to start with. If you don't get the sponsorship, then maybe for you to get unconditional, they might tell you pay the application fee. But I wouldn't worry too much about that.
Yeah. Okay. I think that works well. Chele, I think we've finished all the spit in your mouth. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm actually I'm very thirsty.
I don't know if there's anyone else with a question. I loved the questions from Abira. If there's anyone else to just speak. And yet again, this is the fourth mentorship session that we actually put aside 1 hour, but it becomes very interesting. Now we're at 1.5 hours, and I'm sure other people had other things to do. So if there's anyone else with a question, it is a 30-second period. If there is no question, I don't think there's another member of the committee who's joined. I wanted them to say something, but if in 30 seconds to a minute there's no other question, we can just call it. I want it to be as organic and informal as possible. So anyone else with a question, shoot. Either by raising your hand and muting your mic or putting it on the chat. Thanks.
I take it that means that hang on. What are the major topics of discussion during the interview? Literally the topics, the essays. So the leadership essay, the networking essay, UK university choice, and career plan. So and I want to stress on the expounding. You're not repeating what you wrote in the application, you're expounding. So maybe including things you did not cover in your essays, or expounding on what you talked about. So there's something I forgot to mention earlier, is there's this, you use the STAR approach when you're writing your essays. So STAR means situation, task, action, and result. So you specify for each of those essays, you'll give a situation, the task, you say what action you took, and the result of that. So you'll see it in those guidelines I'll share with Alora. But those that from 2018, you can always get more guidelines online. Like I said, there are numerous resources for shepherding online, from videos to blogs and so on. So do research widely, and you'll find quite a bit of resources.
There's a question that has come in here that I think that is for me or everyone else. Does
Yes,
ACEK
yeah.
have a WhatsApp group? Which means this is a person who is not from ACEK Future Leaders, I think. So yes, Abdi, we do have a WhatsApp group. However, there's a procedure of joining ACEK Future Leaders, which I will reach out to you privately. But thank you for joining us for this session.
Yeah, then something to add for Edward for the interview. Besides your essay applications, they'll also talk about, they'll ask you a few questions. Okay, obviously they'll ask you about yourself. They'll also ask about whether you're keen on, whether you're adaptable, different food, weather, and so on. But again, this varies depending on who's on your panel, because it's a panel interview, usually around 3 people. Who knows, I might be on one next year. But usually they have they have 2 members, I think, of the embassy or the Chevening Secretariat locally, and then an alumni relevant to the applicant's area of interest. So yeah, this is why I was really stressing on the owning your essays bit, because this is where it will show. So if you don't have a grasp of your industry, like I didn't, I think, in my first interview, and you find a civil engineer there, hey, you'll be asked hard questions, eh? But it's interesting enough, that same guy, I met him last year, and using his guidance is actually what helped me get in. So just, again, ask around, do your research, reach out to alumni. They'll always be willing to help. If that particular individual is not willing to help, there are others. There are, how many? Over 450 in Kenya. So if one refuses this, probably someone else will be willing to help. So yeah.
I think that's about it. I think you've really expounded on the topics that were supposed to be mentioned. Thank you very much for this very educational session. Guys, I think we are done, unless there's a pressing question whereby you can actually send us an email at ypfkenya@gmail.com, especially Abdi. I'm sure you want to join us. Kindly send an email. I'll type it down here on the chat. But apart from that, I'll say thank you to everyone who's joined. Thank you to our participants. and this was not in vain. Kindly go to those links, start applying for, the sharing, be in touch with when they're going to roll out other scholarships, especially the Commonwealth, be in touch with everything that is happening, and who knows, you might land on something. So for today's session, I actually had to hurry it up because deadline of sharing is, next week. In future, we'll organize for, other panelists, other presenters, other people who can give us their journey, how to get these seemingly elusive scholarships. But as of now, that is what we had. I will avail all material to all who, would be interested. But for me and the panelists, tasema kwaheri until next time. Thank you.
Thank you, Alu. Thank you so
Thanks,
much.
Alu. And I'll share the documents with you, Alu, and I'm willing to help anyone who's ready to apply. Although for this coming one, I think I'm a bit swamped at the moment. But yeah, just reach out. Reach out if you're applying next.